Hey everybody, Mike Dillard here. So I wanted to record this video for all of you business owners out there who are being affected by the current health crisis and the market crash that is taking place right now. If you are a little freaked out, if your sales are starting to go down, if you don't know what to do, this video was really designed to help you figure out how to navigate this kind of time, because I've been through events like this several times. And my goal today is to really show you how to turn these kinds of events into opportunities. So I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years now. I've been through 9/11, I've been through the Iraq War that followed that, I've been through the crash of 2008, and now we're going through this health/economic crash. During 9/11, I had no idea what to do. The world was in a panic, I panicked along with them, and as a result of that, my business dreams came crashing to the ground, and I ended up spending the next few years waiting tables just to make ends meet. But I learned from that experience. By 2008, I realized that with every crisis comes an equally big opportunity, and this time I was ready. I started a brand new business in a completely new industry in less than 60 days, and that business made over $3.2 million in less than a week by solving a problem that the market crash had created. In other words, I've kind of been around the block, so I wanted to fire up the camera today and share what I've learned with you after going through several events like this already. I spent the last week making, I'd probably say, at least a dozen calls to my peers and colleagues, and many of them are experiencing some significant changes and challenges right now, especially my friends with e-commerce businesses. They're having all kinds of problems getting inventory from Asia. My friends in the education space are having challenges because their primary prospects are starting to, get into a state of fear. And when someone's in a state of fear, most of them are just not really that interested in buying into personal development unless you can reframe your offer and how it's positioned. So if you're a business owner and if your business has started to slow, if your marketing campaigns are no longer profitable, if you're freaked out because you don't know how you're going to meet payroll or keep your bills paid if this continues, I want you to know that I understand exactly how you feel. I want you to know that I have been there. And that first and foremost, no matter what happens, you are going to be just fine. It might require some very big changes, it might require some sacrifices, it might require some very important decisions to be made, but this too shall pass. You will come out of this stronger and wiser than you were before. Now, just to be clear from the get-go, there's nothing for sale in this video. I know a lot of you are really stressed out, and I just want to do whatever I can do to help. So today I'm going to give you 7 pieces of advice right here that will allow you to turn times of crisis like this into ideally a huge opportunity. So let's start with what we know. We know that we're dealing with a viral outbreak that's causing an incredible amount of fear around the world. We know that the health risks at this point in time are still largely unknown and they are changing by the day. We know that supply chains are getting disrupted because the epicenter of this whole thing started in China, which is basically the world's factory. We know that large industry events like South by Southwest are being canceled. PaleoFX just got canceled. We know that international travel restrictions have been put in place over the last couple of weeks for much of the world, and that there is also a very large amount of fear of the unknown. People would rather be safe than sorry, and they're making their decisions accordingly. So here is the single most important question that you need to start with as a business owner right now. We simply do not know how long this crisis is going to last or if it's going to get worse before it gets better. And time is everything when it comes to surviving a crisis that is having a negative impact on your business. Maybe this thing's going to blow over in the next couple of months. Maybe it won't. Maybe this starts out as a health crisis and then it turns into an extreme downturn or economic depression in the marketplace. Whenever you're going through a situation like this, there are 2 rules that you need to write down, and you need to keep these at the forefront of your mind. These are the 2 most important things you need to focus on. The first is 1, time is your friend, and 2, emotion is the enemy. Okay? Time is your friend, emotion is the enemy. The more time you can give yourself in business, the higher your chances of survival and recovery. More time gives you the ability to make better strategic decisions, to update your marketing message, to find new product sources, and to make adjustments that you need to make. The enemy of good decision making is emotion. Fear drives short-term decisions. Short-term decisions made out of fear cause long-term problems. We want to avoid that like the plague. So here's the very first thing that I want you to do. grab a pen, piece of paper. I want you to really become aware of your personal bias in the way that you are looking at the world and what is taking place right now. So are you overly optimistic? Are you in denial? Are you basically telling yourself that now this is all just a bunch of overhyped BS, it's a scam and things are going to get back to normal soon? Or are you overly panicked because you're sure this is just the beginning and that things are going to get infinitely worse? Is your body in a state of fear or anxiety or tension? Are you having trouble sleeping at night? Well, if you're not sure, a really easy way to find out is to look at which stories you've been reading about and that you've been really shaking your head in agreement with, right? Watch this video, guys. I told you this is as bad as I said it was. Or read this article. I told you this is nothing to be worried about. It's all going to blow over in a couple weeks, right? So this is going to reveal your confirmation bias and the way that you are currently looking at the world. Now, I want you to become aware of this bias because this is going to be the primary driver behind the decisions that you make, and those decisions are what's going to determine if you survive and thrive or if you go down with the ship. So which group is right? Well, the answer is neither. The optimistic group is incorrect because the one single fact that we do know is that nobody knows what's going to happen and which way this is going to play out. So I want you to imagine that you're staring off out in front of you and there's a black wall, and beyond that black wall is the future. You cannot see past this wall, and if you can't see past it, you don't know what's going to happen. Well, if that's the case, then how do you make a decision about what to do? The answer is that you cannot. All you can do is guess. Or you can surrender to the fact that you really don't know what's going to happen, and you can strategically plan for both outcomes. So now if you're 100% certain that you know what's going to happen because you're an extremely intelligent person and because you're getting your information from other extremely intelligent people, be careful. Be careful. That's your ego talking, and I can tell you from personal experience that you are going to be wrong someday and that it's going to be a very difficult and expensive lesson to learn. The only way to avoid that from happening is to really detach yourself from your own bias by admitting to yourself that you can't predict the future. All right, so now that I've hopefully convinced you that either outcome is probable, what do you do next? Well, we really need to take a close look at your business and your personal financial situation, and we need to come up with a game plan for 3 potential outcomes. There is, I'm going to put up here bias, identify your bias. So, and then we have our scenarios here. First is best, 2 is bad, and 3 is worst, okay? So you want to start by taking a look at your inventory. You want to start by taking a look at your monthly expenses, your savings, and your cash on hand. And we want to basically start creating possible scenarios based on those numbers. So how many months or years of runway do you currently have if your current numbers stayed the same? If your sales stayed about where they're at right now, if your expenses stayed about where they're at right now? Well, if you're operating at a loss already, you're burning through VC money, how long is your runway? And what's going to happen if you need to raise another round of capital? Well, I can tell you right now, it's going to be infinitely harder and your terms are going to be absolutely horrific. So you want to make sure that you can extend your runway as long as possible. Now, what if things get worse? What if this crisis goes from bad to worse, and what if your sales drop 40% in the coming months? And what if the worst case scenario happens, and what if this crisis lasts for a year? Well, if you have that optimistic confirmation bias, here's what's going to happen. You're going to say, this whole thing's overblown, it's going to end soon, we definitely don't want to let anybody on the team go, so let's just keep everybody on, and things are going to turn around, it's all going to be great. Well, that's a good guess. But what if that actually doesn't happen? I can tell you that what's happening right now to a lot of my colleagues who are selling physical products that are manufactured in Asia, it's not good. They can't get inventory. And this is especially the case if they're selling products that have skyrocketed in demand, like freeze-dried foods or supplements. They've seen demand rise over 1,000% in less than a week. And now guess what? They're sold out of product. Many of them have significant levels of overhead. They have customers knocking down their door to buy products, but they cannot get any inventory to sell. This happened to a lot of gun stores, if you remember, back in the crash of 2008 and 2009. Some of those stores actually went out of business because they could not get any more guns or ammo to sell, so they had to fire their staff or close their doors, even though the product the demand for those products were like off the charts, right? Now, on the other hand, you could have a negative bias. You could expect things to get worse. So you start to immediately pull back on ad campaigns, you start to order less inventory, and you start to let some staff go. But guess what? Things end up getting better 3 months from now, and you've likely killed any momentum that you've spent the last few years building. So you have to overcome your bias, and you have to strategically plan for both outcomes. So here's what I would suggest you do. You want to take a look at your expenses, you want to take a look at your cash on hand again, and you want to create some milestones that are going to trigger strategic decisions on your end. Again, emotional, reactive decisions are going to kill your business, and the best way to avoid making emotional decisions is to really put a plan in place ahead of time that is based on event-based milestones. So many of you, I know this, are going to do whatever it takes to keep your team intact. You would rather spend your life savings than fire your employees that you care about because you know that they're depending upon you. You're going to take that hit because you believe in yourself and you know that you're going to figure this out because you always have. And I know that many of you are going to do this because that's what I did when I went through the biggest challenge of my career. I ended up selling my house and I cashed out my investments before I was ever willing to fire anybody because I was determined to fight till the end. And you know what happened? I ran out of time. I ran out of money. And after a 2-year battle, I had to fire most of the team anyway. And now on top of that, I'd lost everything that I'd ever made because I cared too much. And my confirmation bias was to the optimistic extreme. I made decisions based on bias and emotion, and that destroyed everything as a result. What I should have done was create a set of milestones that said, hey, we have 3 months to accomplish X. If we don't hit that goal, then Y happens. Or if revenue drops to X, then our expenses have to be cut by Y. And those scenarios become your decision makers. You take the emotion and your bias out of the equation. Will it be difficult to make those decisions and take those actions? Yeah, absolutely. But your job is to keep the business alive above all else, and that's going to require you to make some extremely difficult decisions and to have some pretty painful conversations. But if you keep the business alive, there's always an opportunity to hire those people back and bring them on, where that's not going to be the case if it goes out of business. Now, if you wait to make those tough decisions until you are forced to, you're already too late. That means you are now in a reactionary state and you should have made those decisions months ago. If your revenue's dropping, you're going to need to cut overhead. And the sooner you do that, the more time you're going to buy yourself and the less reactionary you're going to be. And in that case, the better off everybody is going to be in the long run. So to sum that up, in step number 2, we need to create a game plan that is based on revenue and expense milestones that are going to inform you of what you need to do if market conditions worsen. This is going to allow you to have your downside covered, and it also means that you're going to have a plan just in case what's on the other side of that black wall is a longer and scarier road than you anticipated. All right, so number 2 here is plan based on milestones. Step number 3 is we want to understand that disruption creates opportunity. So a crisis like this, I want you to think about it as like a wildfire that burns down the weak and inexperienced, and that all of that new space and open territory creates an opportunity for new businesses with new ideas to take root and to prosper. Really, the global chessboard, if you will, gets turned upside down and the game gets reset, and that creates all kinds of new industries and opportunities for those who keep their cool and think. You want to have a plan to capitalize on that opportunity. Airbnb, Cloudflare, GitHub, Pinterest, SendGrid, Slack, Stripe, Uber, and WhatsApp. These are all companies that were started during the crash of 2008 and 2009. Now here's what you need to know, and that's that your mind is going to see whatever you are focused on. If you focus on fear, you're going to find fear. If you're focused on opportunity, you're going to find opportunity. So the first thing that I want you to ask yourself is, how can you use this as an opportunity to have empathy for your customers? In my personal opinion, the worst thing that you can do is pretend that nothing's happening and you're just ignoring the issue that's at hand, all right? Your customers are not stupid, and they're probably concerned right now. So acknowledge that. Acknowledge what's taking place, step up and provide some leadership, and let them know that you know how they feel and what they're going through, because we're all going through this, right? Stop being this emotionless company that's pretending to ignore the problem because you're hoping it's just going to go away if you do. If I ignore this long enough and just keep acting like I've always acted and saying what I've always said, this is going to go away and everything's going to be fine. Maybe, maybe not. Be a human. Send a card, send a video, and just let them know that you are here to help in any way that you can. If your customer base consists of medical professionals like hospitals or doctors or nurses, what can you do to support them and make their lives a little easier while they're taking care of the rest of us? Even if they aren't your customer base, can you get some food and coffee delivered to your local hospital? Think about things that you can do that are going to increase goodwill with your audience and in your community, and have empathy. So that brings us to step number 4. So as an entrepreneur, we are professional problem solvers. I want you to start making a list of the problems that you're seeing in the world right now, and I want you to start coming up with solutions, right? So we're going to put problems down here. If people are in a state of fear, they will happily pay for a solution that will provide them with a sense of safety or security. If business owners are losing revenue, what can you do to step in and use your expertise to help them turn that around? For example, my friend Brian owns the largest Airbnb training company in the world. He teaches tens of thousands of people how to make money as an Airbnb host. Well, we all know that the travel and hotel industry is getting absolutely crushed right now, and I would imagine that Airbnb bookings are seeing a decline as well. If I had some properties listed for rent, I would immediately buy some high-grade air purifiers for each of my homes. I'd include some bottles of hand sanitizer and some Lysol in every one of those homes, and I would immediately change out the photographs and the summaries on my listings to feature those items. I would have my cleaning teams wipe down everything that gets touched in that property with products like Lysol and other sanitizers, and I would talk about that in the front and center of all of my listings. And if someone's looking to book a short-term rental, who do you think is going to get the business? You're going to get the business. This is just another example of how you can pivot when you insert yourself into your customer's internal dialogue instead of just ignoring it and pretending that this is all not happening and that it's going away. So after the crash of 2008 and 2009, I really sat on the sidelines and I watched as everybody's portfolios dropped by 50%. And frankly, that really pissed me off. It also made me realize that I did not want to invest my money into Wall Street's machine that just churns the public's money without consequence. So I decided to really start a new business where I simply interviewed investors and wealthy entrepreneurs in order to learn how to invest like the rich. I was not an expert in that industry. I didn't know anything about investing, but I saw a problem and I pulled together a group of people who were experts and I interviewed those individuals. It was hardly a revolutionary idea, but it was the right message at the right time, and it was a solution to an unexpected problem that nobody else was providing, and that's why it became an 8-figure company within 12 months. Now, with that being said, there's a flip side to this, and there's another lesson that you need to know about. If you have a business that is founded on solving a specific event-based problem, that business will likely decline once that problem goes away. So once the markets recovered back to their previous levels in 2013, that business dropped off substantially because the problem had disappeared. So just be aware of that. All right, so that brings us to step number 5. And right now, I want you to ask yourself what you should do if you do have a lot of cash on hand and a really long runway. So if you look back at the Great Depression in the 1920s and 30s, there's a very important lesson that you can take away from that period. The companies that boomed and that took over their industries once the Depression ended are the ones that kept advertising during hard times. Why? Because their competitors stopped advertising. They couldn't afford to, or they were too scared and they pulled back on everything. Well, what do you think would happen to Pepsi if they stopped advertising for 2 years and Coke didn't? Coca-Cola would absolutely take over the vast majority of that market share and those customers, and once times got back to normal, they'd be absolutely dominant. They'd have all of the distribution contracts locked up, they'd have all of the shelf space, and they would 10x the revenue that they had previously before the crisis had even started. So use times like this as an opportunity to step up with your advertising in any way that you possibly can. Right now is as good as it gets for free PR. Take what you know, apply it in a way that's relevant to the events that are taking place right now, and you will absolutely find yourself on any news show that you want to get on. If you want some more guidance on this, I would absolutely recommend a very short and amazing book on how to do that. It's called Free PR by my friend Cameron Herold. It's excellent, and you could read it in a day, and your mind is just going to be absolutely lit up with ideas. So make sure you go read that ASAP. So step number 6 is that we want to use this current crisis as a motivator to get your personal house in order. What do I mean by that? The chances from you dying from the virus, if you're under the age of 50, is incredibly small at this very point in time, and you're probably more likely to die from cancer or a car wreck right now. But why let a crisis go to waste? Let's use this opportunity to make sure the back of your house is handled. Do you have cancellation insurance in place in case you're planning to hold a live event? Do you have a living trust in place? Do you have a business partner? Does your current operating agreement take the potential death of that partner into consideration? What happens to his or her shares? Do you have a life insurance policy in place? I know that sounds incredibly basic, but a dear friend of mine recently died of cancer, and he did not take the time to get life insurance, which has put his wife and his kids in a really, really difficult position. Now, if your parents are over the age of 70, frankly, they are at actual real risk here with the current death rate. The last stat I saw was over 70% for anyone over the age of 70. Do they have life insurance? Do they have their affairs in order? Now, if you are like me, you probably own some crypto assets, and you probably have these assets locked down in hardware wallets or exchanges behind several layers and passwords and two-factor authentication that makes it nearly impossible to get to. Well, the same probably goes for your business servers and all of the other SaaS services that your business depends on. Do you have a way for your family and your business partners and your attorneys to access those assets if you get run over by a bus tomorrow or you get sick, right? So over the past few days, we've seen companies like Amazon and Goldman Sachs announce their continuity plans in case this crisis or any crisis down into the future does get worse enough to where they actually have to put those plans in place. What are you going to do if you're in bed sick for 3 weeks and you're the primary breadwinner and founder and CEO and driver for your business? Do you have a plan for that? So use this as the motivation that you need to get these important foundational pieces in place right now. Finally, number 7, what do you do if you're financially against the ropes right now, okay? What if you're struggling to pay your bills coming up on the 1st of this next month? Well, it's pretty simple because you have 2 options, and that's basically it. First, you get creative as hell and you absolutely work your tail off. Right now, people want to stay at home, so start delivering food for Uber Eats and Instacart. If you have a skill, you can offer it for half the price of your competitors until you create some more financial security. Reach out to 100 people a day, offer to help them in any way that you can. Set up a profile on Fiverr. Do whatever you can to bring in cash flow. Find a group of people who do have money and who do have large businesses and offer whatever services that you possibly can to them. Call out their primary competitor. Let them know that times like these are when you step on the gas and that you want to help them crush their competition. When you go to war with somebody like that, with a team like that, and you come out the other side with the win, which you will, the opportunities in front of you at that point are going to be absolutely endless. So do whatever you need to do, but absolutely, no matter what, do not give up and do not give in. Fight every single day because this challenge will come to an end at some point. It will be gone. Everything will go back to normal. And then at some point down the road, it could be a few years, there's going to be something else that happens. The point is, this too shall pass. This is not about what's happening around you. This is about your reaction to it. So at the end of the day, here's what I want you to remember. The biggest danger to you and your business right now is your personal confirmation bias and the way it's going to distort your decision-making process. Stop pretending like you know what's going to happen, because at the end of the day, you're just making your best guess, and the consequences of guessing wrong are far too big and they're completely avoidable. Prepare for all three potential scenarios, take your emotions out of that decision-making process, and then find ways to adjust your messaging to match the mindset of the market. And most important of all, focus on finding opportunity instead of fear, because you will ultimately get what you're looking for. This is a time to get creative and excited because you're an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurs are built for times like these. Now, with that being said, go out and help the world. And if you need help and support, just go to MikeDillardHelp.com. I've put together a quick little survey where you can let me know where you are currently at and what you need help with most. And I'm going to send you some additional resources and advice that can support you. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this helpful. If you need some additional help, again, go to MikeDillardHelp.com. And if you know an entrepreneur who could benefit from this advice and my previous experience as well, please feel free to share this video with them.